This is the Check for Traps podcast, issuing a personal apology to all of the Atlanteans whose ocean we have repeatedly pissed in.
Chocolate starfish!
Keep rolling.
No, you know what? I might leave it. So, Aquaman, the review. Right.
Aquaman.
It has been a long and fraught road to this film.
We didn't think we'd get here. We
didn't.
And in a way, we didn't actually get here.
No, absolutely. It's kind of split us in two. I mean, I say kind of, it literally has split us in two, and now I'm trying to sew it back together. But there we were. It's on mic in the Suicide Squad video, where we both agree quite vehemently that we're not going to watch this film.
It's true, and history can remember me as sort of like Benedict Arnold, because I was, or actually probably, I was just trying to think of there's loads. Western literature is full of like misogyny. When is a great man seduced by a woman to do something terrible?
Macbeth.
Macbeth, Adam and Eve.
Yep.
I was taken from my bed early one Saturday morning.
That's right.
And my loving girlfriend said, "Do you want to go watch Aquaman?" And I said, "No." And she said, "I'm going to go watch Aquaman." And I said, "Okay." And then I was going with her.
And then he was in the seat.
And
he was 24 pounds lighter.
And I had a lovely time, and I really enjoyed Aquaman.
We made a blood pact, you piece of shit.
We did.
And our motivations were so sound. The problem was this movie was being marketed so hard that we actually found it quite entertaining, if I remember. We're walking down the street, sun is shining, hands in each other's pockets, like, ha ha ha. They think we're so gullible that if they just make enough trailers for Aquaman and spend enough money on it, we'll go and see it. Well, no, we said.
Yeah, I remember saying I'm happy that they've said Aquaman final trailer, because it means I don't need to watch any more trailers for Aquaman, because I'm bored of Aquaman.
We were so negative about it.
Yeah, I didn't want to see this movie. I quite like Aquaman as a comic book star, and I wanted it to stay like that. But then hubris.
Like the Manchurian Candidate, Aaron is delivered back to me talking about this great movie he just saw called Aquaman.
Yeah, it could have been like, a quick cut in a comedy where like we talk about it and then I walk in the next day and I'm like, "Hey, do you want?" And I'm wearing like an Aquaman t-shirt.
Yeah, you got the Aquaman baseball cap.
A fake trident, like a plastic trident in my hands.
Trident, speaking like Jason Momoa.
Hey brother, you want to go watch some Aquaman? But that is not the end of the story.
No,
that is just the beginning.
So that's betrayal number one, and then this is where I failed.
So
as a podcaster.
After that, I said, so I wanted other people to see it, mainly so I could see if I was crazy or not. Because I said this to Josh and I said this to different people. It's like when you're sitting next to a child and they're really enjoying it and you sort of get swept up in it. Like, my girlfriend was loving this film so much that I was like, oh, maybe I've been, compromised. And so I asked other people to see it, and eventually, despite much
trepidation and protestation.
Exactly. Yeah. I managed to get a group of 6 people to go see it, which is...
And I was one among that party, turning out to be the Boromir of that party, because I did actually fall ill on the day we were supposed to see it.
So I watched Aquaman again with 4 other people this time.
Yep.
In comparatively an incredibly drafty cinema next to a raging drunk.
A crazed drunk person.
Who smelt so strongly of whiskey and who...
And it wasn't me this time.
No, and for once. As well as that, got like very distressed and sad and left the film early. But so between us, the tagline... We've seen it twice.
It's like a G.R.R. Martin fantasy prophecy or something, because my goal was to limit the box office sales of this movie twofold, and then I didn't end up seeing it. I betrayed my friend as he'd betrayed me, and DC got like 6 ticket sales out of it. So
it's like Romulus and Remus.
I completely failed.
It's or Cain and Abel. It's a real, it's a real tragedy.
Oh man.
I did enjoy it less the second time. I will confirm. The audio quality in the second cinema was so bad.
Was it the Odeon?
Because everything's put through sort of like an underwater filter. On a bad speaker, that becomes really noticeable.
The audio in the Odeon is very poor. I mean, I remember when me and you went to see Halloween, and during a quiet scene where they were coming upon what was going to be like a dead body, I could hear "We Are the Champions," and I thought that was a weird choice for the scene. But then I realised it was Bohemian Rhapsody in the next room. So
see, my problem is that is
you get what you pay for with that place.
It's one of my favourite moments in that film, and it's not even a moment in the actual film. Yeah. It's a moment in another film that happened to be playing next door.
You could never replicate it. It was true art. 2
very different experiences. I think the problem is my expectations were so low, and I'd been taken there almost under duress and with the promise of a good meal. And yeah, I loved it. Yeah, I loved it. I walked out of there being like, that was so much better than it had any right to be. Like a tier 1 Marvel film, like Thor or like Captain America. Yeah. I think it was better than those. Like it had a...
I'd like to pick up on that comment quickly and say that that while I really, really enjoyed Thor in the cinema, because I'd never seen a film like it, because it was a fish-out-of-water comedy that was also a superhero film, I guess the first Avenger is okay. I think that, like, on balance, they're both actually pretty average, and, like, I really like those aspects of Thor, but it's actually got a really canned action plot
really
in it.
narrow plot. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the fact that it's about gods and the majority of it just takes place in like a little loser town in New
exactly.
Mexico or Nevada, or wherever
Absolutely,
it is. Like,
in the desert. And the problem I had with this is a weird problem to have, but with Captain America: The First Avenger was that the whole thing just looked really, really cheap.
Yeah,
I
so
watched
tacky.
it like a year after it got released, and I was like, it's quite difficult for me to be invested because I feel like he's running through, as I always say, a PS2 cutscene.
Yep, so often. And as well, like the costumes, like, because obviously they try and like do World War II and they try and make it quite expansive, and it looks so tacky.
It does.
He looks like he's ran into like a reenactment setting. Maybe if I go back and watch Captain America, I'm willing to concede that Captain America and Thor might be sort of like better put together films. Like there is bits of this that do look kind of tacky. There's like a de-aged Jango Fett and Nicole Kidman. That people seem to really dislike. I think it's. I mean, I'm going to put my cards on the table. I quite like their little love story. I think it's really sweet.
No, that's fair
And
enough.
so I'm willing to overlook the fact they aren't that age.
I mean, to de-age Nicole Kidman is to put a bit of a hat on a hat, because she's been, aggressively trying to de-age herself for the past 20 years.
So I quite like that. I'm willing to forgive that. But I do agree it's actually quite a pacey introduction. There's only about 3 or 4 scenes. Like the scene of the father and Nicole Kidman meeting. There's like them having the child, or like working out what the child's name is going to be, child being born. A single scene of Aquaman is like maybe like a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
And then you're into Jason Momoa territory.
Yeah.
So it's a nice quick. It's not like they label. And I really like Jango Fett in this film. I don't know his name, unfortunately.
No. Everyone knows who you're talking about, because it's his only other screen role.
Exactly. I can only assume, like, by sheer happenstance, he's been in like 2 billion-dollar movies now, or soon to be, I suppose.
At least this one's actually good, though.
Unlike Attack of the Clones. Yeah, I tell you what, this is probably better than Attack of the Clones. There you go.
That's damning with faint praise. I mean, lots of things are better than Attack of the Clones. You could punch me in the stomach and that would be over quickly, and so it was better than Attack of the Clones.
The problem is, I feel like loads of people, like people I respect, and people I don't respect so much, have been either not seeing this movie like we were not going to, or have been seeing this movie with such cynicism that they just were never going to like it. I mean, I know I went in trying to do that exact same thing and maybe failed, so maybe I'm just trying to be an apologist here, but I think I think James Wan does a stand-up job. I think it's like more so than any other DC film, it feels like a standalone film that could have a connotation wider, but doesn't really. Like there's one reference to anything outside of the film.
What is that reference?
It's literally a line where Aquaman's girlfriend, Amber Heard, she's called Mira in the film. She's trying to like coax him into action. He says like, only last year you defeated Steppenwolf and saved Atlantis.
Okay.
And then he goes, that had nothing to do with Atlantis. I was saving the world.
Yeah. All of them have this all of them, carry this weight to a certain extent. I quite enjoyed the way it was dealt with in Spider-Man Homecoming, in that you cut to sort of the desolation on this, the lower streets of New York being cleaned up by Vulture and his construction guys right after the events of the Avengers, because it is very, very hard for these films to exist in each other's universes, and I do actually respect the attempts to make them gel.
But equally, I really disrespect when they don't bother. Like in the Defenders, they just, New York changed everything. They say that a lot. I don't know if you've watched any of them more.
Oh man, really. I'm not going to watch the Defenders because everyone hated it. And
no, I meant like the associated properties, like Jessica Jones.
I've seen Jessica Jones. I've seen like one episode of Luke Cage. Okay. I heard that Iron Fist was the worst thing that ever happened. Pretty
terrible. Yeah. And Daredevil's fine. I quite like Daredevil still. So please now with Punisher, they often say like, New York changed everything, but you never really see it.
I was going to say you can say that, but then they're still just doing the same kind of crime capers that they ever would have been doing.
And it only broke today, and I think this is quite pertinent. The Punisher 2, which is in canon apparently set after, or should be set after, Snap in Infinity Wars.
Season 2.
Yeah, that won't be referenced. So he said it's because Marvel didn't tell him that it was going to happen. So again, I think like, especially maybe it's just the Netflix side of things, I think they just really didn't care. But if you're going to center these shows with the idea that they exist in the same universe, you need to tell them, because otherwise it's just like, well, I guess it happens before Infinity War.
Yeah, it's completely ridiculous.
So again, like you said, I think it does it in the best possible way. I think James Wan wasn't too interested in making a DCEU film. He was given the choice of this or The Flash, and he said he said he picked this.
Yeah.
And he said he picked this specifically because it's a character that no one, he said he picked it because it's a joke character.
Yeah.
And he said that he wanted to challenge himself, and he wanted to try. And he said like if it was a flop, everyone would be like, well, it's an Aquaman movie. What are you expecting?
No, he's very clever. And we'll get into that in just a second. I have one last thing to say. I remember when we were discussing Suicide Squad, which just went up, the relative drawbacks of Suicide Squad in comparison to Guardians of the Galaxy, and how what's good about Guardians of the Galaxy is it can take place in the same universe, but it also occurs on the other side of the cosmos, which makes it easier to carve its own path before deciding to join the rest. And with this mostly occurring under the sea, unreferenced Atlantean setting, I guess that probably works in its favour. But with regards to James Wan, so what you just told me there, that's very interesting. That's a really smart move from him. He is categorically a very smart man.
I would agree. I mean, he'd made his career by like age 23 or something, hadn't he? So yeah, I got nothing but respect for that man.
He just does kickoffs for franchises and then just abdicates them, like what he did with Saw. So to be very clear to anyone who's like tuning in and thinking about listening, I do think that the Saw franchise as a whole is like a morally reprehensible mess of like torture pornography. However, that first movie he made is just a kind of gory suspense film with a very high concept, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now, he made that for no money.
Yep.
And I think it made like 10 times its budget or something, and then also led on to be, I think I read it was in like unadjusted dollars, the highest grossing horror franchise of all time.
Yeah, I was going to say,
That's
huge.
Insane.
Yeah. It's such a mad start off. Again, like you said, like sort of in isolation, it's just a horror film with an interesting, if quite gory gimmick, and it's unfortunate that it became almost a parody of itself, and it became more and more like torture porny. And but again, people were willing to watch it, so I guess we only have ourselves to blame.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not, I don't want to censor it or anything. I just think that it was, as it went on, it became quite horrifying. The
it's like no one
popularity of those films.
I think James Wan sort of, and again with Insidious, I sort of got out of horror by those were fully running, but I have the feeling it's the same thing. Like there's 7 of those films now. Across the universe. I think it's part of the Annabelle universe as well. He starts franchises that suffer from franchise fatigue, and that might be why he's not quite as sort of critically acclaimed as other people are. And then he started to do big budget films with Fast and the Furious. Did he do anything before that? Like really big budget.
I just know that into Insidious, into The Conjuring. Yeah, he shows up, creates a property that has like really enduring appeal, and then he just leaves again. And I think that is to be respected, even if I'm not a massive fan of the properties themselves. I'm interested with someone who understands the audience in that way. And that seems to be highly relevant with how he came to do Aquaman. Definitely.
Well, I mean, in terms of picking Aquaman over the Flash, like he's defined Aquaman for a generation, if not beyond. Like you can already see DC have announced sort of like an Aquaman comic in the vein of the Khal Drogo, because obviously Aquaman in the comics is a blonde-haired guy, blonde-haired white man. Yeah, exactly.
Ocean guy.
Yeah, exactly. Nazi. Did you put in there?
I did say that.
Okay.
You did hear that correctly.
I did. I agreed to that.
You did.
The fact that this has been such a success, and as a current standing is $877 million, which is more than any DCEU film.
Just over Batman vs Superman at $872 million.
So yeah, the fact that he's done that, I mean, Jason Momoa's probably got a gig for life if he wants it.
Yeah. I hope he doesn't take it though. I hope he leaves and does something else.
Me too. I mean, the thing is, I'm sure he's probably got a contractual obligation to be in as many of these as they're willing to make, so he might not have much of a choice. But
that's true. I was thinking of James Wan. Excuse me, you were saying Jason Momoa.
Oh, I see. James Wan can go. I don't think they'll want. I mean, they'll want to keep him around, probably in the same way they wanted Chris Nolan to stick around.
Yeah.
But I don't think they will. I don't think he's probably, because again, I imagine James Wan has a lot more bargaining power than Jason Momoa. We know Jason Momoa. We all know Jason Momoa because of Game of Thrones.
Yes.
But I was saying this to Alec. He's not actually been in much, really. No. Like he had Frontier, which is sort of like a middle of the road Netflix series.
He's been in some bombs.
He had Conan, which no one really saw, and he had the Justice League, which is like a famous dud.
Yeah.
Every time you hear him talk about it, he's just bloody thrilled at how well this film's doing. So I can imagine. I imagine he's just, because it's probably what he wanted Conan to be for him.
Yeah.
Because that made Arnie. I think he could have really cemented Jason Momoa in that same way.
I have respect for these guys more than most kind of like film buffs and cinephiles, because even though some people may say, prior to Aquaman popularity, it's just like, oh, he's just a really ripped guy. Well, it's like, you know what, man? I've met actors, and then I also read like their fucking books and stuff. And I really do think that even though they can say he's just a bit of a meathead, I can guarantee that he has worked harder on maintaining his physique to make himself marketable to studios than most of these assholes do on their acting skills.
Definitely. Well, when
a lot of theirs is just a narcissistic magic trick. So fair play to him, man.
When you look at like sort of Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill and stuff, like none of them work half as hard to maintain all that. And again, like none of them are just like that into it. And again, like with Justice League and stuff, like, when he's talking about that, I've watched some of the behind the scenes footage. He's kind of concedes he's probably, even probably behind Ezra Miller in terms of what people recognise. But
well, he's done better out of it than Ezra Miller has now.
Yes, exactly.
So good for him.
Yeah.
And Ezra Miller was doing a bit well anyway. So fuck that guy.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up one other thing, telling me earlier, which I thought was quite compelling. So you said that it seemed like the plan for DC, if this movie was going to be a dud, was just going to be to completely abort the DC expanded universe, the cinematic universe. And now that this has done well, they're not going to do that. And what I think is interesting about that is it's cool that this has done well, and it's cool that you like it so much, and it's cool that people like it so much. I would like to see it. But do you think maybe it's kind of resuscitated something that just needed to die? It's like,
maybe
they've amputated the arms off the old person. They're keeping it alive out of some weird sense of like obligation.
Yeah, of personhood.
But the person really wants to die. So it's like, yes, I know that this is good, but I don't really see how the rest of it is salvageable. Superman has left. Affleck is probably just off gambling somewhere.
Drinking.
Yeah, drinking.
Drinking heavily.
There you go.
So I do, and I wanted to bring this up. So one plan that was floated around in between, so just before Justice League failed, there was this plan. There's a very famous comic book and quite successful animated film called Flashpoint. And I know obviously that there's any number of the bag of tricks they've got in there for rebooting stuff, but essentially what happens is Flashpoint, where the Flash essentially breaks time and goes through to a different universe. Some of them, so say in this case, your Henry Cavill, your Ben Affleck, Batman would cease to exist. You get new actors in for that. The timelines merge at the end of Flashpoint.
Right.
And so you would have like your Jason Momoa, Aquaman, your Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman, because people like those. Maybe even your Ezra Miller Flash, if people really like those. I know he tested positively in Justice League. People seem to like him. So you keep those, and then you get a younger Batman. Maybe you could even have a nice thing if Ben Affleck's willing to do it again, where he sort of like dies heroically. You could easily do that. He's quite a tragic. I know you haven't seen the films he's in yet, except 2 seconds he's in Suicide Squad.
Yep. That was fun.
Yeah, he doesn't come across as a tragic. Well, he does come across as a tragic figure there, but for all the wrong reasons.
Tragic because he's being slowly lowered into an alleyway.
Yeah, exactly. On a crane. So yeah, there's the talk about that, and I think that would really work, because the two superpowered heroes you got, the two probably superpowered heroes you got that aren't Superman, Wonder Woman and Aquaman, are the fan favourites now. And you can do quite a lot with that. You could easily have those two and Ezra Miller maybe solving this time paradox. Big news in the DC universe. Batman and Superman are gone.
Yeah.
Need to find them, and then in the end, the way you find them is you bring over a new Superman and a new Batman. It's kind of cheesy, it's kind of meta. People will probably call it lazy, but I think it could really work. I think you could have some real poignance there, and it keeps it all canon. A bit like to me, I imagine it as being sort of like their version of Days of Futures Past.
Yeah.
Like that really, because Days of Futures Past was basically like housekeeping.
Everyone's favourite X-Men movie as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But effortlessly, it managed to not only correct the canon and make sure that X-Men 3 didn't happen, which is the best idea ever.
Yeah.
You could do that. You could make it so Justice League didn't happen. That'd be really fun.
I completely agree. I mean, everyone loved that, and it had its own really excellent grimdark sense about it as well. I mean, just the
teleporting, where they're constantly teleporting and like they're dying, and then she like sends them back in time, and they're dying a bit more. Like
the dread.
That's the stuff of like 2000 AD, sort of like like your schlocky. You're not schlocky, but you're sort of like your low budget pulp comedy, sci-fi.
Yeah,
and it really works.
No, the cosmic doom that we're such big fans of / haters of. I mean, they've been doing stuff like that in comics all the time since the 90s.
Yeah,
so
and
I
why
don't
not?
really see why not. I mean, I know that it's like the Clone Saga becomes the Grown Saga, but this is the direction that the cinematic universes are moving in.
And they're going to have to.
They have to, exactly. They have to, because they need to reboot, and they need to reboot in camera, as it were.
And and not only that, they need to get new actors, because there's talk about Chris Evans not doing Captain America anymore.
Yeah.
Like these actors, unlike comic books, these people do get older,
Yep.
and you can't digitally de-age them forever. No. Thankfully. Though they might try.
Yeah.
Do you reckon Don Cheadle will still be there in like 20 years?
I would love it if he was the only one left over.
He's still crippled from Civil War, and
That's
he's just walking around.
That absolutely empty character beat, where Tony kind of looked up at the sky tragically and then remembered that, it doesn't matter. I always care about Don Cheadle, man. I love that guy. I only want things to go well for him. I even love his Cockney accent in Ocean's 11.
Is you're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off?
You know full well that is the Italian job. I hate you so much. You knew what you were saying there.
Oh, yeah, I did.
But you did
Sorry.
it anyway to hurt my feelings.
I'm totally sorry. You can edit that out if
He's
you want.
no, I'll leave it.
Okay.
He's bash.
I know, I'm kidding.
So I'll get back on topic. So this movie, to me, from watching the promotional material with you, the tone of it seems like, so there's loads of Superman in it.
Yep.
To the point where I'm amazed I didn't notice that the first time around, because he lifts a submarine in such a way that Superman exactly lifts a plane in the Richard Donner movies.
Mm-hmm.
Then we also had some kind of Aqua King appearing to him in hologram, much like Jor-El in the Fortress of Solitude. But then also like loads of Flash Gordon kinds of stuff as well, and I'm not against that.
No, it's so all the Atlantis stuff like is so it's got such a unique feel to it.
Yeah.
In I think people I've seen have described it disparagingly as being like the Gungan city, but I don't think it. Yeah, it reminds me a bit more of like the best bits of Avatar. It's like that, and it's a nice world. I said this I think to you earlier. I said that, so what this film does that I really enjoy is it in 4 there's like obviously there's the realms of Asgard. There's like all the different realms, and you see like see like Earth, you see Asgard, and you see Jotunheim where the ice giants are. In this one, there are 7 kingdoms, and I thought it was going to do much the same thing because they're introduced very early on. Dolph Lundgren is the king of one kingdom. Patrick Wilson is the king of another one. Digimon Honsu is the king of a third kingdom. John Rhys Davies is the is king of the crab people.
The crab person.
and there's you know then there's like sort of what happened to the other kingdoms. And there's a big thing, and I was like, oh, we're not going to see any of this. It's going to be because I was still very cynical at that point. This is like 10-20 minutes into the movie. And you see all of them. You see every kingdom in this, and they're all really great. Even the kingdoms you see for maybe like 4 or 5 minutes are lovingly designed. They have different like, cultures, different infrastructure. The crab army has an entire sort of unit list of different like artillery. Like there's a beautifully shot scene where there's like a long take of just the destruction of the crab versus Atlantean war, and like there's just all these different like really interesting units playing up to their crab and humanoid strengths alike. Yeah, it just a really well thought out movie trying to be very dumb, but like dumb in a good way. Like James Wan has
easily digestible.
Yeah, he's clearly gone out of his way to make this feel like a sort of either a Saturday morning cartoon or like an anime. Like, you remember you used to watch Dragon Ball Z?
Yeah.
Like, you got Jason Momoa and Patrick Wilson just charging towards each other, yelling at different points.
Yeah.
Like, it's wide, they're bashing into each other. There's an anime sound wave at one point. There's an octopus playing the drums during an arena scene. There's like it's just so damn charming. The trailer doesn't do it justice because they try and use the one line as a sort of setup. They just flesh out the character. He's a guy, he doesn't, he's never been to Atlantis, feel like he belongs, but then he's seeing all this stuff, and again, it's a fish into water. Put that on the trailer, or put that somewhere.
Nice.
A fish into water story. It's such fun.
I'm down with this. I want to get into the nitty gritty of this like right away because I know that you'll have some interesting stuff to say. So this is a film about hereditary privilege and responsibility. He's a king.
Yep.
He needs to assume his right as a king. We will agree, surely, that by and large that is actually quite an annoying trope and is very rarely explored well. So now I want you to tell me why in Aquaman it's actually not annoying. It's interesting. Or if it just gets away with it, because either is fine.
I think it might get away with it. I hadn't actually considered, but I think I might be giving it a pass on that because. So I'll give you the setup. So Nicole Kidman is the queen of Atlantis.
Yep.
She is washed up on the shore. I don't think she intends to run away, but she ends up doing it because she ends up falling in love with Django Fett. And they have Jason Momoa as their child. Arthur Curry is the firstborn, even though he's a half-breed. And Atlanteans are racist, by the way. They don't like half-breeds. They also believe that surface dwellers are inferior to them.
Okay, that's going to lead me comfortably on to my next question. I'll count that for a while.
No, that's good. You enjoy that. I actually tell you what, it references like the racism quite heavily. It's really interesting. It doesn't just kind of brush it under as like a sort of a trope.
Yeah.
Which I like. He's the firstborn son. Patrick Wilson is the second-born son. Patrick Wilson's very keenly aware of this. One of the reasons that Patrick Wilson's got such a sort of stick up his ass is because he's never been able to assert authority, because every time...
Second in line.
Exactly. Every time someone's there, he's like, well, what about your half-brother? Yeah. Even Dolph Lundgren's holding it over him, because Dolph Lundgren admits that the Atlantis kingdom is the best kingdom of all of them. But he's like, well, you're just, what about your brother?
He's a Denethorian steward to the throne.
Exactly. So he also is... As well as that, like, I haven't mentioned this yet, but people have criticised Patrick Wilson's motivations as being generic. I will challenge anyone to a boxing match over this because it's about pollution. Like throughout the film, there's like this horrible grain. Like even in the arena scene, you can see sort of like plastic can ring holders, just floating in the water. Like you see fish choking on them. There's like this horrible graveyard of shipping containers. And Patrick Wilson's entirely right in as much as he says these humans are reckless and dangerous.
Yeah.
And that's all very true. How he goes about it perhaps isn't the best. Basically what he does is he's got to sort of unite all the kingdoms. So only upon getting the vote of the majority of the kingdoms, 4 of 7, can he become the Ocean Master.
Okay.
Which is his name. The reason there's a dumb name is because that's his name in the comics.
Yeah,
He is Ocean Master.
Oh, I love it.
And again, like watching Patrick Wilson say, "I am the Ocean Master," it never ceases to amuse me.
In for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
If they're going this far, they might as well have the Ocean Man.
No one ever questions the hereditary rights. So I won't say it addresses it in a compelling way. It's not like it puts a cliffhanger on it. And at the end of the day, he does earn the right to be king more than get it. He's not a king by birth. He has to become a king by sort of challenge.
Okay.
So that works. But again, you like Black Panther, you've got this sort of thing where it's like incredibly advanced society determines leadership via trial by combat.
Yeah.
Which isn't the most...
There's an enormous dissonance between the supposed capabilities of the society and their cultural practices.
Exactly. But unlike Black Panther, so in Black Panther, it's written into the rule system. It's like the next Black Panther is determined by trial by combat.
Yep.
In this, the trial by combat is a purely personal thing.
So fucking dumb.
I know, right?
Carry on.
No, it really is. But in this one, Patrick Wilson tricks Arthur Curry into fighting him in the arena.
Oh, yeah.
Because he knows he'll beat him.
Does he ask him for his autograph? But really, he's got like a death waiver.
He so basically at that point in the film, Arthur Curry, Aquaman, knows that Patrick Wilson wants to invade the surface, and he knows to stop him. He says he's sort of like a Path of Least Resistance character. He's like, if I beat him, we're done. I don't need to go get the trident. The trident's stupid. I don't believe in the trident.
Okay.
Got that thing in the trailer. He's like, I got me a trident.
Yeah.
That's what he's referring to. He's
so
like,
he wants to skip.
Yeah, he wants to skip the plot
of his hero's journey and actually just dispatch the guy and then go back to fishing.
Exactly. That's the thing. He doesn't even want to be king. He just wants there not to be an invasion, and that's fair. Like,
I actually respect that.
And again, that gives him some conflict with Willem Dafoe and Amber Heard because they're both there. Like, you're the rightful king. He's like, I'm not the rightful anything. I'm a drunk from the Maine. I drink, I just drink with my dad. Like, that's what I like to do. Patrick Wilson gets him all riled up. Nicole Kidman is said, throughout the beginning of the film, is said to have been sacrificed to the trench for having Aquaman. So he's got a real chip on his shoulder that he killed his half-bred birth. Killed the mother.
To the death of the mother.
Yeah, exactly. Part of sort of like this whole, I don't belong, I don't want to go to Atlantis. They seem like a horrible race. And then Patrick Wilson goads him with that, so they get into the fight. Patrick Wilson easily beats him, because obviously Patrick Wilson's only ever lived underwater.
Yeah.
He is quite literally out of his element, which is a line from the film.
Oh, Jesus. I guess you got to lean into it.
There's actually a really nice scene that I wish you'd seen in there. So there's a bit. So the arena is sort of like an actual. There's like loads of Atlantans cheering. It's like a real sort of anime crowd. They cheer when all the fight scenes happen. But there's a lovely bit where there's like a scoreboard of pros and cons, and like the pros of Patrick Wilson are sort of like handsome, the king, etc., etc. And then there's no pros for Aquaman. And there's only cons, and there's half-breed and drunk, which is such a nice little like visual cue.
That's fantastic.
It's amazing. It's and again, like that's the sort of it's those moments. It's like that moment in like the Drum Octopus, and there's a couple of moments throughout where it's just really like wearing on its sleeve that it's just trying to be schlocky sci-fi fun,
endearing.
Yeah, exactly, and it works, and in terms of like endearing main characters, like Jason Momoa really. He's made for that role, in my opinion, of like tough but kind of clueless, along for the ride. And he looks, he looks like something out of fucking fantasy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why he only does fantasy, I assume.
Definitely.
I mean,
you can't cast him in like the Office Place comedy or something.
Unless he's like in a small cubicle and he's like typing away and he doesn't quite fit.
Yeah, that's the joke.
Yeah, exactly.
Picks up the tiny phone and crushes it.
So yeah, no, I'm gonna have to concede there. It doesn't actually ever. You could say it does purely by him having to become like he undergoes a journey.
Yeah.
He earns the trident like by thinking in a way that no one from Atlantis ever would. So again, sort of like it's half and half. It's a very inclusive movie. It's all about how isolationism doesn't work. And again, I guess you could read that as like the themes of the time.
Yeah.
With Donald Trump. I don't know. It's not trying to be overtly political, except in its environmentalism.
That's just it's just a good message.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't feel forced at any point. It works really naturally. It's very thematically competent, which is more than you can say for I'm going to say every DC film other than Man of Steel. Okay. Wonder Woman's message, in my opinion, gets really confused at the end.
Do you think Man of Steel is thematically consistent?
It's very libertarian.
Really?
It's incredible. It's incredible. Like
I know about. There's the school bus crash
where he says you shouldn't have saved them. Yeah, exactly.
But the children were going to die.
No, yeah. Even so, so people might call me out on this. Man of Steel is thematically consistent, not with the character of Superman, which obviously makes it a bad Superman film, but with Zack Snyder's beliefs.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I mean, I will gladly debate anyone on that because I'd like to be proven wrong. But in my opinion, I think that Man of Steel is, for better or for worse, thematically consistent.
Yeah. Something can be thematically consistent, without also then being good.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The consistency is not inherently.
Yeah, you can find some pretty terrifying Soviet propaganda films that are thematically consistent.
But yeah, I guess that's important. I think this film is very consistent. I will say people have criticised this. I don't know if it's quite true. They say Arthur Curry, Aquaman, at one point he'll be an idiot, and at the next point he'll know Roman mythology.
Okay.
He's in there in Sicily. There's sort of like this ancient Roman temple.
Yeah.
And he knows Agrippa and Romulus and Caesar and Cleopatra and all that. And he knows.
He's just a bar drunk.
Exactly. And it's and he explains it that his father insisted that he knew his history.
Yeah.
But again, that never comes up.
Yeah.
It's not and it would have been nice if Django, because even just a really easy scene. So there's a nice bit at the beginning where Django Fett and Jason Momoa are drunk. They've been drinking for a while.
Yeah.
And so the two of them are stumbling to their car. And at one point he says, "We need to get our tattoos finished. Your grandpa would kick us both in the head if he knew." And so there's this idea that he respects the tradition of his people because they've both got these tribal tattoos up and down their arms. So you could have had it really nice. You could have been history's important. That's a really quick scene to add up, and it would have made Django Fett's character a bit more. But again, that's so minor. That's such
that's fair enough. But it's if the groundwork is there, I could imagine myself becoming a bit frustrated with someone being dude bro surfer into mythology expert.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And again, I might have a warped frame of reference for this because Romulus, King of Rome, is pretty simple to me, but it might not be. I get it shouldn't be simple to Jason Momoa, perhaps, and you might want that. I can't refute that as a criticism, but it didn't bother me at the time.
I really want to. If you're okay with it,
I've had the floor long enough.
No. If you're okay with it, we can move into this being just the last topic because I think it's being interesting. Mm-hmm. But so, Aaron, what does this film have to offer me that Blade 2 doesn't?
For one, it obviously being made 26 years? No, it can't be 16 years.
Oh, I don't know. I think Blade 2 is from 2002 or 2000.
No way, it's not that late on, is it?
Oh,
shit, 16 years then. I got that accidentally right.
Yeah.
So being that much later, the CGI is incredible. And especially considering I was about to say how cheap a budget was made on, but relative to modern films made on
the other DC
100 million, 160 million, supposedly.
It does look mind-bogglingly expensive for what it actually is.
It does. And again, I think part of this is consistency. So obviously one of the reasons that Justice League and some of these other films look so terrible is that they were constantly redoing the CGI and they were constantly redoing the design. And I imagine from this film, just from how I know James Wan works and how I know his vision for this film was very consistent, I can imagine that they nailed it early on and they just refined it from there.
Yeah.
And you can really tell, even down to, and again, this is the sort of the things that I obsess over, but just the consistency of the armor and the troops and the differentials between the kingdoms are really nice and they're really well developed in a way that you don't necessarily expect from these films.
Yeah. The world building was very good.
Exactly. I know it's cool. There are the merfolk people, they're called the Fishermen, which is a terrible name for them, but it's from the comics. So, but the joke is that they are fishmen, which is awful. But even so, I call him Digimon Honsu. That's Digimon Honsu. People can contest this. It feels to me like a world, but that's ridiculous considering it's a merfolk crab person world.
Yeah.
But these feel set up places.
And this is much like how in Blade 2 they pick up the mythology of the first Blade movie and then flash out the society and then you have the vampires were the threat in the first one, but now there's a threat to the vampires and they need to get Blade on side.
I was about to say that. So really it's all the Blood Party in Blade 1, I believe. Is that in Blade 1?
Yep.
Yeah.
Bloodbath!
Yeah. So what I would offer is that the world building, the CGI is a lot more tonally consistent than Blade 1. Blade 2. Also, there are no, as far as I'm aware, known felons in this film.
So Jason Momoa gets done for tax evasion.
Oh my god! I bet you.
And worshipping Egyptian gods.
Shit. What else? Oh god! No, you've asked me the one question I'm ill-equipped to answer.
That's right. I can lead into another.
No, give me
another good one.
Go on.
Blade 2 is a film that famously has excellent lines over and over and over again. It's like my daddy said before he killed my mummy, if you want something done right, you've got to do it yourself. All of these, just the best writing ever. Can you tell me what line in Aquaman would make me go as crazy as lines in the Blade movies, such as "some motherfuckers always trying to ice skate up a hill." Is there an equivalent in this movie for teenagers?
No. Just as the off. There are some lines that, like, in the film, I thought were quite good, but when seen in isolation on a trailer, I thought were really cringeworthy.
Okay.
Such as, "I could have just peed on it."
Yeah.
Which is obviously really lame.
But if you
instead in isolation.
if you liked the character, much as, like, you know, if you liked a person who said that, like, it's just funny because you know them.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
I guess the thing is, so Jason having his cake and eating in this way, there is some tonal dissonance. Obviously, he's supposed to be like this badass drinker, like from Maine, of all places. Only in the second viewing, by the way, did I get that it was Maine.
Okay.
To begin with, I thought it was in Australia because obviously Jango Fett is, I believe, either.
I think he's from New Zealand.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think he's like a Maori, isn't he? Like, and that's the tattoos. That's what they're going for. I guess he's a Maori who moved to Maine
To presumably be
a lighthouse keeper.
a minor character in a Stephen King novel.
Yeah. That was his aspiration. But then he got there and it was just James Wan with like a clipboard.
I guess I'll deal with this.
Yeah, it's an interesting character. I mean, Jango Fett's character is one of the more fascinating. Once I learned that he was in Maine, because again, I thought it was nice. I was like, I rated having a sort of Pacific Ocean setting, but it's not. It's actually the Atlantic he's looking out into.
Fair enough.
Closer.
Well, you're talking about how the father was a good character, how you enjoyed the sort of like cultural heritage aspect of it.
Yeah, like the character. The character of the father, he has some good lines. Like I said, I still actually, one of the lines I told to quite a few people was the line of like being able to drink underwater and him just having a soup. They are just quite nice characters. There's actually, I'll end on this because it's the end of the film as well. So Nicole Kidman, they find her. I think it's probably implied by the fact that there's a digitally de-aged Nicole Kidman, that there will be a re-aged Nicole Kidman.
Definitely.
So re-aged Nicole Kidman is alive, and she basically helps Arthur Curry become the Aquaman. He gets the trident. They have the fight. He beats Patrick Wilson. Peace is resumed. He becomes the king.
Yep.
He earns it. And I was hoping they did this because again, like I was quite suckered in the first viewing by the Jango Fett Nicole Kidman love story, which I never thought I'd say.
Yep. It's a crazy old world we're living in.
I love it. He walks down to the pier. So when he finds her by walking down to the pier to like do his rounds on the lighthouse, and every day he's walked to the edge of that pier in the hope she'll come back after he left him.
Oh,
after she left him.
Django.
It's lovely, and like they show him doing it a couple of times. There's some sad music playing. It really got me. It's like just a nice moment. He's quite like obviously Jango Fett's getting older now. It's sad. We have to admit it. We have to come up.
It's true.
Have to face this. Attack of the Clones was a long time ago now.
It was a long time
he doesn't
ago.
look like that anymore.
Oh man.
So
the Caminos aren't making a clone army out of him anymore.
that would have been a great twist. It actually kind of looks like Camino at some point with the rain and the water.
Oh nice.
Oh god. So he's walking down the pier. And then at the end, you see him walking down the pier after the plot's been resolved. It's the very next thing after Arthur becoming king. He's walking down that pier and he sees her there, and they run into each other's arms.
Nice.
And it was really lovely. It was the nicest way to end the film. And Jason Momoa sort of like the camera pans up from them, and he goes like, "My father was a lighthouse keeper. My mother was a queen. They were from two different worlds. They were never meant to meet, but their love saved the world." And I was like, shit, that's fucking lovely.
That's right.
The fact that actually had like a emotional impact is a good testament.
It
That
must have been working.
He'd done his job right by the end of that film.
Yep.
That was good. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well,
On the racism angle, there's actually there's quite a weird thing. So you were saying obviously like hereditary privilege, an annoying trope in these films, like sort of like the destined to be person, and he isn't necessarily destined to be. Though obviously he wouldn't be being considered if he wasn't Nicole Kidman's son, which is an issue. But as well as that, there are two other really weird issues. So one is obviously that Atlanteans are very racist towards surface dwellers. They view them as lesser, and you can kind of get it due to their power level, but it seems to be like an implicit thing. And the other thing, the more important thing here, is that Arthur Curry, Aquaman, wouldn't be able to breathe on land if he was like the son of an Atlantean peasant.
yeah,
It's only by being a certain type of Atlantean. It's not really classified as to what.
like a highborn one.
Yeah, that you can that you can breathe on land, and so Aquaman can, Patrick Wilson can, Nicole Kidman can, but like the rank and file troops who make up the army can't. There's a captain of the guard sort of guy who beats Aquaman in an earlier fight, who has to put his head in a toilet at one point because he can't breathe on land.
That's fucking amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a big issue. And the guy I was telling you about, Black Manta, who's like a sea pirate. Aquaman kills his father early on. Like he leaves him to die. And he's like, help me, you can save him. There's like a torpedo on his leg. It's a weird sequence of events, but it works. And he's like, you could save him, and Aquaman's like, you've pirated, you've killed, you asked the sea for mercy. And he like leaves. The son can't
Would
get...
prefer it if Wesley Snipes was saying that.
Obviously.
But carry on.
I prefer if Wesley Snipes was every character in that scene.
Definitely.
There were 3 of them. So...
you can save me, motherfucker. Ask the sea for mercy.
The young Black Manta Jr. running jobs for Patrick Wilson anyway. He's basically Patrick Wilson enlists him into this false flag operation to attack Dolph Lundgren. To give Dolph Lundgren...
9/11.
Exactly. It's all 9/11. James Wan is a truther.
I do hate that.
Don't...
Yeah.
No, I don't know if he is he? Actually?
Oh, no, I just mean... what I'm talking about is basically...
False flags.
The prevalence of 9/11 truth narratives in movies.
It's everywhere.
The guy who wrote Star Trek Into Darkness is actually an explicit truther.
Really?
Yeah. And what worries me about it is once it's in the cultural zeitgeist to the point where false flag operations that are about like superpowers wanting to declare war on other people, once that's in superhero movies and Star Trek movies directed at fucksticks, that means it's something that people generally like eat up without criticism. So
as well as that,
something that always worries me.
It'll like normalize it, I guess.
It does normalize it.
It'll be like false flags happen every day. I remember it in Aquaman and in Into Darkness.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's enough for them.
James Wan tried to warn me about the government, but I didn't listen.
Oh my god.
So Black Manta, he's helping Patrick Wilson with some false flags. There's a bit where Dolph Lundgren's is Mira's father, and Mira goes rogue, and Dolph Lundgren's like holding Patrick Wilson back. He's like, you're not going to kill my daughter. And so Patrick Wilson has this great idea. He goes to the mercenary, and he's like, I need you to kill Aquaman, and I need you to kill the redhead.
Yep.
And he gives him a bunch of Atlantean tech, and he's like, your primitive human mind probably won't be able to, might be able to use this. And there's a lovely, like, kind of Tony Stark-esque montage of him, like, modifying the suit and modifying everything, and, like, he spray paints it black because it comes all in white. He like, refined this tech into something a lot more deadly. I'm annoyed that almost doesn't get brought up by Patrick Wilson, or, like, he doesn't rub it in his face, and he's like, humans ain't that bad.
Well, it would be a good addendum to the racism that you're talking about.
Exactly. So there's him, and then he works with some of the low-born Atlanteans who have to breathe underwater, can only breathe underwater, and they have, like, when they're on land, they have, like, these, like, Space Marine-esque on that have water in the front of the face. And it rubs me the wrong way to have, like, lowborns who are actually inferior in Atlantis. And again, like you said, maybe sort of like normalizing something that shouldn't be normalized.
I don't know. It's when they include stuff like that, especially in like fairy tales and stuff, it's like, unless you're going to subvert it, I'm just uncomfortable with its inclusion. And obviously, to a far lesser extent, it's just what annoys me about like the whole king assuming his kingship. Basically, I just find quite boring, because obviously I have no respect for monarchy. You know what? I'm not even going to be boring and say like as an institution, but just as like a literary device. Like you can have someone assume, It's more interesting for someone to become a hero when it's less clear as to why they should be, even if other people expect them to do so.
Yep, I would
do it in this way.
So I guess what makes Aquaman an underdog in this isn't so much his lineage, but his half-breedness. So it's sort of like he is entitled in one way, but not entitled in the other, which is and it does sort of reject the idea of half-breeding being a bad thing, and it just talks about how perhaps it would be superior, especially. And again, I think you could probably have done something more interesting with that. Say if it's like if you wipe out the Atlanteans can not breathe underwater, or maybe have it so they all can only breathe underwater, and then Aquaman being mated means that he can do both. That would give him a real edge.
Much like how in Blade 2 and Blade 1, obviously, he was the daughter. Sorry, he.
Oh my god,
he was the son. Wow, I want to make that version. So, his mother, Blade's mother, was pregnant with a human child, but then she got bit by Frost. Yeah.
Yep.
So then you've got the Daywalker, and then they all want the Daywalker because Frost wants to become the Blood God, and then everyone will be a Daywalker, and then the weird kind of scary super vampire in the second one they've made, they want to make those Daywalkers as well. They always want him.
There you go.
So,
Rob.
But it shows that mixing races is a good thing, because it means that you can walk around in daylight and not burst into flame.
Exactly, and in that way, obviously, Aquaman is the natural successor to Blade 2.
Yep.
I have got nothing more to add.
No, that's fine.
That's as an addendum to the race thing, it is kind of lazy. I can't defend it. It didn't detract from my enjoyment, though. I guess at the time I was like, oh, that's a bit weird.
Yeah.
But like you said, like monarchy is such a frequently used literary device. I guess because just being king sounds cool. That's it. That's probably as simple as that, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think it's some conspiracy to legitimize the monarchy.
No, not at all. No, it's because I don't believe in conspiracies of that kind. I think people do it because we've always done it. So
yeah, and again, I guess because he's king of Atlantis, it's like we have this weird thing where sort of like advanced societies like Themyscira and the Amazons, they have a queen.
Yeah.
The Atlanteans have a king. I guess it's because they're supposed to be ancient. It's like they could have moved on.
Yeah.
I would like to see like the president of Atlantis.
Yeah.
Because again, it's sort of
the Parliament of the Crab People.
Yeah, exactly.
That's sick.
Again, so they are the Seven Kingdoms in this, which was very Game of Thronesy, because that is literally Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. You got the Crab King. Like, why? You could be Crab Corp. The CEO of Crab Corp. It's Gimli. He's like, what does he sell? Crab. Oh crab. God.
Oh my
Packaged.
God. That's right. His own people.
Soylent Green is...
But only the smaller crabs, the sub-crab people.
So yeah, you're right. I guess we can officially label Aquaman problematic, but in like the weirdest way.
Not in a way that, once again, not in a way that people shouldn't see it. It's just interesting to talk about. I don't think we should ban Aquaman and shoot Jason Momoa.
No. Yet.
And we'll end on that.